We're on the record. Is it 9 o'clock? It is. Good morning.
Good morning.
It's 9 a.m. on 25 October 2022, and this is a continuation of the independent cab matter. The record should reflect that Vice Chairman Thompson is present, Member Decker, Member Soderberg, myself, Dan Reeser, so there is a quorum. Administrator Armstrong is here. Council and it appears those parties who wish to be here are here. Would you all stand and join me in the pledge of allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, has this matter been noticed and posted in accordance with the open meeting law?
Yes.
The first item of business will be to take public comment. This time is set aside for any member of the public who wishes to address the board on matters within its jurisdiction. No action may be taken. We ask that you limit your time to 3 minutes if possible. Is there any member of the public that would like to address the board? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and resume the evidentiary hearing in independent cab. And I believe, Mr. Gibson, the ball is in your court. Before we start, any preliminary matters?
None from the applicant?
No, none.
I will indicate, and Administrator Armstrong will keep me straight on this. Mr. Awad has notified us that he wants time to present oral argument, a closing argument. So there was a discussion last night before we recessed on time for oral argument. I'm going to give Mr. Awad the same 30 minutes I give each of you. If that is a huge problem, I'd like to hear it now, but that's 2 hours of closing on behalf of the interveners. I'm going to give Mr. Carson 1 hour, 15 minutes. So. Any questions?
No.
One, I guess. I mean, in closing arguments, you're arguing the evidence, and Mr. Awad hasn't been here to know what's into these binders. So I'm at a loss. I mean, he just shows up and he's available, and now he can be a full participant.
The issue whether to cancel an intervention or not was determined yesterday, and I let him participate, and I will let him close. If he gets far afield of anything that was ever presented as evidence, that will be my job. He did indicate he had read the transcript, so.
No, there was a transcript.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gibson.
Thank you. On behalf of Yellow Checker Star, first off, I would like for the Taxi Cab Authority to take a notice pursuant to NAC 706-957 of its annual statistics and monthly statistics that have been disclosed from 2003 all the way through 2021.
And is it your representation that that board up there is accurate as to those statistics?
Yes.
We will take notice of the statistics as are in the record of the agency.
Yes, and I've also disclosed those statistics as part of the discovery process.
Correct. Yes.
Just so that the record is clear.
Thank you.
And most of that will be addressed during closing arguments, actually. We would call Mike Balin to the witness stand or to the chair, so to speak.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to give to the Taxi Cab Authority of the state of Nevada will be the truth and nothing but the truth?
Yes, sir, I do.
Thank you.
Michael, will you please introduce yourself to the board? Though I'm sure they know who you are, but.
My name is Michael Balin. I'm the general manager for YCS and UCAP.
And how long have you been the general manager there?
A little over 2 years now.
And I also believe you're employed by taxi management, is that correct?
Yes.
And what is taxi management's role with regard to YCS and NewCab?
Taxi management, we manage the 7 cab companies we have, which is Yellow Checker Star, New Cab 1, 2, 3, and 4.
And for simplicity purposes, we'll call the Yellow Checker Star YCS. Is that, you're familiar with that nomenclature, are you not?
Yes, sir.
All right. So,
Mr. Gibson, I just want to make sure I understand. Are you referring to YCS as all of those companies that you just identified?
the only parties that officially intervene are Yellow Checker and
That's what I
Star. So, which is why I'm
Okay,
limiting
thank you.
to that.
Thank you. That's why I was asking.
Now, were you employed by YCS when YCS purchased the Frias medallions?
Yes, I was.
And what was your position there at that time?
At the time, I believe I was director of taxi cab operations.
And then after the Frias medallions and other assets were purchased by YCS, is that when your employment shifted a little bit to be taxi management versus YCS?
That's correct.
So how long have you been in the taxi cab business?
A little over 30 years now.
And how did you get started in the taxi cab business?
I started off as a driver. In 1992, I found myself, like a lot of people I interview and hire today, I was in a really bad spot. Not a very exciting story, but I was barely making it. My wife was staying home with our young children, and these jobs were really meant for people much younger than me, but I was just trying to get through. So my main job is I was a busboy in room service at Bally's, and I specifically took that job because it offered health insurance. I was delivering 2 paper routes over on Swenson, not the best area, but it was okay. I was working at a print shop where I was stapling things, and I was working at a gym where I was cleaning up after people, and we were barely surviving, but we were surviving. My wife made great meals. She kept our credit perfect, and we were doing well. And then I got laid off at Bally's. It was a union job, and they did it by seniority, and I was the low man on the totem pole. And they were very nice. They actually found me another job, but it was part-time. It didn't offer any benefits or anything. So one thing I did at the end of my paper route job, every day I would look through at the want ads, classifieds, and I was trying to find something. I don't know, I was looking for it because the truth is I had no skills. I'm not mechanical. I didn't go to college. I went into military, and although I did well in the military, none of my skills I learned there were really marketable in the real world. But I saw this ad for a cab driver, and then I saw it offered benefits. And so I went down and I applied. At the time, Whittlesey, I think it was only interviewing 1 day a week, and the room was packed. And only one person doing interviews, and I started to leave. So I'm not waiting around for this. And I got to my car and realized I had nowhere else to go. So I went back, I got hired, and really felt like I won the lottery that day. I didn't know at the time, but it's turned into this amazing career. When I started in this industry, like I said, I was a high school graduate. My wife was a high school dropout, and we had four very small kids. I'm still only a high school graduate, but I've been really blessed by a lot of people in this industry. Some of them are in this room today that have really been great mentors and teachers to me and helped me grow throughout the industry. My wife, who, like I said, was a high school dropout, took a class here, a class there, and at 40, she graduated and became a teacher, and a great teacher. She's been Teacher of the Year. She had a fellowship with UNLV for 5 years and taught there. Right now, she's this hybrid program with the community college and the school district. It's really helped us really give a lot back to the community. We have kids from her first year that we're still friends. We go to weddings and stuff. My 4 kids, all of them have graduated college and all have great jobs and are very productive. Our big Balin news this summer was my youngest daughter, Kimberly, already a degree in community health science, got a degree in in nursing. And so she just started her first nursing job up in Reno. She's working in oncology med surg, so we're very proud of her. And you know, if I come across as a little much, it's because I love this industry. It's legit. I get up almost every morning at 3:30 and I go for a jog with my dogs, and I have this routine where I like to think about the day before and how that went and what it's planned to stay. But one of the main things is I really try to think about all the things I feel really lucky in my life about. And one of it is that I found this industry because it's changed my life.
And so which company did you start out with originally?
I started off with Whittlesey. At the time, I think Cheryl was the office manager, and she was fantastic. I remember my two youngest children are twins, and they were premature, so they had some medical issues early on. One of them is the one who just became a nurse, but we had some insurance issues because they both had the first letter in the first name, Social Security, but Cheryl was great, and thank you, Cheryl.
And so how long were you with them?
I think I was there for about 5 years or so. I don't know the exact.
And then what made you make the change to Yellow Checker Star?
At the time, the old director of operations, Bill Schrenko, had moved to Yellow Checker Star, and he asked me to come over and took a little break from the industry, and then I went to go work for Bill.
And so how long have you been with Yellow Checker Star or YCS?
About 24 years now.
And so where did you start with? What position did you start with?
I started as a driver.
And how long were you a driver with YCS?
About 2 years.
Okay. And then kind of take me through your career path at YCS, how you went from a driver all the way up to general manager.
Well, I had been driving for a couple of years, and I was going home one day, and Bill almost ran me over and said, "Hey, how long you been in the industry now?" And I said, "I don't know, I guess I'm pushing towards 8 years." He goes, "It's time for you to get into management. Come see me tomorrow." And I interviewed with him, and at first I told him no, because I was a pretty good cab driver, and when you're supporting a family of 6 on one income as a cab driver, you become a very good cab driver. And I told him I don't think I can make it. It's going to be a lot less money. And my wife said, "No, I'm sure it's going to be a good thing. It's good. You're going to see how great you are." My wife's my biggest fan. And first paycheck, I said, "We can't do this," because my paycheck was about the same, but I wasn't making any tips. She goes, "No, I am confident this is going to turn into something good." And she was right. I took the job. I did that for about 2 years. And then I became special projects coordinator. Then I became director of driver development, then operations manager, then director of operations till my present position as general manager.
Right. And that process has taken over the course of about 20 years?
Yes, over 20. Long 20.
All right. So kind of want to go through a little of those steps. As far as a driver supervisor, did you learn something more about the taxi cab industry at that point than you did when you were a driver?
Sure, I had been dealing with driver supervisors, but I really understand how that was kind of the hub of the company. Everything goes through that, whether it's a breakdown, a call in, a complaint, everything kind of goes through there. So that was my first really position where I really started to learn the cab industry.
Okay. And that would be true at every step of the way as far as your career path at YCS?
Yeah, every step that I moved into, I'm always amazed how much I didn't know before I got into that position.
And how long were you director of taxi cab operations before you became the general manager?
I believe it was about 4 years, maybe 4 or 5 years, something like that.
And as far as you becoming general manager, that's also true where you continued to learn things that you didn't even know as director of taxi cab operations.
Yeah, a ton of things. I really never knew about all the licenses and permits, and even as before we came here today, I sign the checks, and I get these big piles of checks every day, and all the things we have to pay for, I had no clue about until I got into this position.
All right. Now let's talk about YCS's business model. Both YCS and NewCab are, just for the record, so you know, are both employee models. Is that correct?
Correct. No leasing.
All right. And now, has YCS or ever leased vehicles before?
Yes, in I guess it was 2019, for about 9 months, we piloted 20 vehicles for a lease program.
And how was that program?
It wasn't what we didn't really like it. We kind of lost control of the drivers. We couldn't get them to do the things we wanted them to do. And it just, when the pandemic hit, all of our lease drivers turned in their leases and we never restarted the program.
Right. Now, you had said you couldn't get the lease drivers to do what you wanted them to do. What do you mean by that?
Well, we've always really been big on taking computer calls, service in the community. And as a lease driver, the lease, from our experience, we just really had very, very little control over what they were doing. And we had a lot more safety concerns. We seemed to have more discipline problems with those drivers. We just didn't have the oversight that we like to have.
Right. Now, as far as the leasing program, did you have any driver qualifications before you would even consider allowing them to lease a vehicle?
Yeah, I came up with a different criteria. The biggest one difference between employee and the lease drivers, I wanted them all to have at least 1 year of driving experience
And what,
with the cab company.
so not just having a driver's license for a year.
Right. Yeah, no, they had to have driven a cab for at least a year.
All right. Now, with the lease program, did you bring any new drivers to the industry?
No, we didn't advertise it. The word got out really quickly and we were only doing 20. The first day when, I don't know how it spread, but we had cabs from every cab company lined up and down Post Road. I think ended up having over 600 drivers that wanted to get on the list.
All right. And those were already permitted taxi cab drivers?
Yeah, every one of them was permanent.
And all of those would have come from some other company?
Sure, we had some of our existing employees that wanted to be on that list too, but most of them came from other cab companies.
Why did you require the drivers to have at least a year of experience?
Well, we knew we were going to have less control over them, so we wanted to make sure that they had a proven record, that they knew how to drive a cab, they knew how to get around the city, because we just knew that we weren't going to be able to provide the same training for a lease driver as we did an employee. It's constant with our employees. We work on everything from productivity, customer service, how they go about their jobs, servicing calls. Sometimes we wanted to go to different locations, and we knew we wouldn't have that opportunity to do, so we wanted to make sure since they were going to kind of be independent, that we wanted to at least have the confidence that they've been around the industry, and hoping to be safer drivers by including those, or requiring that at least a year.
And you had you kind of mentioned some safety concerns with the lease drivers?
Yeah, from my experience, they seem to be a lot more aggressive. They had this nut that they had to crack every week, and they just seem to be a lot more aggressive than most of our employee drivers were.
And the more aggressive drivers, typically the potential for more claims arise?
That's been my experience, yes.
And you had said that the lease drivers weren't able to service the public as much as you would prefer.
They could have, but it's didn't seem like most of them had any interest in doing that.
Okay. Now, as far as YCS with its employees, does YCS also require the 1 year of driving experience within a taxi industry?
No.
And why the difference there?
Because we're definitely going to be working with them, and in many cases, constantly, which we didn't have that same opportunity to lease. And with drivers, we're everything. We're looking at their productivity, and part of that is seeing how many computer calls they've taken. We're bringing them right in for customer complaints. We're looking at videos. It was just a lot easier. The truth of the matter is, I prefer to hire somebody who's never driven a cab before. We do hire drivers from other companies, just like everyone does. But if I had my choice, I'd rather be able to train our drivers the way, and I'm not knocking anybody else's business, but we have our own way of doing things, and we would prefer not. It is easier to onboard an existing driver, but we've had more success long-term with bringing people from outside the industry.
And what does YCS do to train its drivers?
Well, we have a bunch of training programs. The first thing, before a driver, before they could even complete the hiring process, they have to go through the taxi cab authorities class, and we take that very seriously. I mean, it's so surprising to me that we hire people from other companies who don't make it through the taxi cab authority portion of the test. And we don't just pass them. I mean, we have to close the position. And we give more than one chance, but if they can't pass it, we close the position. But if somebody's made it through everything, we've offered them a position and they've been licensed by the taxi cab authority and done everything required, then they go through our training program. Initially, there's 2 days of training for a new hire. It covers everything from how to make good money, how to handle different situations, how to operate the meter, policy and procedures, not just for our company, but also for the taxi cab authority. Part of the training is we have 2 L3 simulators. They're state of the art, really big. They cost the company a lot of money, and it's a 4-hour program. It's called DriveWise, and basically it's an hour of classroom, then an hour on the simulators, then back to the classroom for an hour, then back to the simulators, and we put them through a lot of different scenarios. Most people have an accident during that, but we want them to have that accent while they're in the simulators. And then part of the training is on the road. And we use that for 2 purposes. One, we are able to show the drivers all the places in the city that are popular, like all the cab stands, the airport, the back roads. But as we're doing that, we also require every person in the class to take turns driving. And sometimes our trainers come back to me and say, hey, this guy ran 2 stop signs, where maybe, so we close the position right there. We don't take any chances. And our trainers have the ability to close the position if they think a driver's unsafe, and we take advantage of that quite a bit. But then we have other classes. We have special service training. We have a class called professional drivers training, which every one of our drivers is a condition of employment. And primary goal on that class is customer service and how to provide better customer service. And we want our drivers to provide good customer service, but we also want them to have the ability to maximize their tips so they stay in the industry. So we really try to give them the tools that are available out there.
Now, as far as when these potential new drivers are in the training class, are they paid for their time?
We pay a minimum wage, yes.
And so that's an expense that you're incurring whether the person becomes an employee or not.
Correct. Yes.
You already. Now, you talked about coaching the drivers. Like, what do you mean by coaching the drivers?
Well, I mean, like the example, the first thing I do every morning when I go through there, I look at driver productivity. I want to see how they're doing. And that kind of leads me into a lot of different things. I can see a driver's not using all their tools like the computer, or maybe they're playing just one stand all the time. Maybe they have a lot of dead miles, so I know they're just cruising too much. And is that just a bad habit, or are they using the cab for personal use? Every day, we also go through videos that are sent to us through our provider on cameras. And we're looking, and that tells us a lot of things. Sometimes it's safety related. Sometimes we see things that poor customer service, might be smoking in the cab, which we don't want our drivers doing. So a lot of different kind of coaching that we provide.
All right. Now, in addition to just better supervising of the drivers, are there any other benefits to the community by having the taxi cab drivers be employees?
I think so. We have, as I think both Cheryl and George testified to, we're part of Cabot. Our 4 companies or our 7 companies are part of it. And not just because of our size, but we do more calls than those other companies. And it's not a knock on them, but because they have a lot of lease drivers tend to not play the computer as much, so they're not servicing the community as much. So I think there is, we can do a better job. We also could do it like Mr. Decker, I know you brought up several meetings back about providing better service for the EDC. When we have events, first of all, in every event, we send road supervisors out there, and they can directly get onto our DT5 and tell drivers where we need them. But even as they're coming to work in the morning, like EDC lets out kind of in the middle of the night, early morning, we're sending drivers, hey, we need you to go directly there. So we have more control over our drivers to tell them where we want them to be.
Okay. And you kind of mentioned Cabot. Now, what exactly is Cabot?
So Cabot is, it's our 7 companies, Desert's 2 companies and Bell's 2 companies. And the whole idea behind it was after Uber got into our market and we realized they were kicking our butts. And one of the ways they were kicking our butts, they were able to provide better service because they had a lot more partners, or I don't know what they actually refer to them as. And so we wanted to try to do the same thing. So we all took all the numbers we had for dispatch, ported them all into one area. We all got on the same technology. And so it's closest cab technology. So whoever is the close, it might have been one of our customers for the last 50 years, but if one of George's cab is the closest cab, that hail is going to go to that company. And so it really helped us from a time where, you know, we were doing a horrible job as an industry service in the community. We had it down before the pandemic hit to under 7 minutes from the time somebody called in on average, we had a cab in their front door. And we're not quite there yet, but every day we're lowering that number and we're going to get back there again, I'm sure of it.
All right. All right, let's talk about the drivers that YCS has. How many drivers does YCS have?
Just YCS, or, I mean, I looked yesterday between YCS and New Cab, we had 1,651 drivers yesterday.
And is YCS currently trying to hire any drivers?
Always looking to hire, like Cheryl mentioned yesterday, we have a lot of longevity, but there's also a lot of turnover as well. So if there's a quality applicant, we're gonna find a spot for them.
And can you estimate how many hours you think you spend or the staff spend at YCS trying to hire new drivers?
I do 7 days a week. It's very time consuming. We do a lot of advertising, and I try to weed them out through our application system, online applications, and then we have to interview them. So it's very time consuming.
All right. So just because someone submits an application, that doesn't mean you're going to hire them.
No, we turn a lot of people away.
All right. And why do you can you provide the board an example or why you would turn someone away?
I mean, it could be anything from poor safety, a driving record, criminal records, job performance. You know, they've gone through a lot of jobs, just their demeanor when they come in, how they look. So I think we're pretty selective, and we turn quite a few people away.
Now, my understanding is there's a lot of expense. There could be some
And
expenses.
just to clarify, the way it look, it means, you know, how they're dressed. If they come in, they don't look like they're very serious about the job is what I'm referring to there.
Okay. Not everybody wears their Sunday best to the interview. Is that what you're saying?
No, and that's okay, but sometimes, you know, they come in with a tank top and flip tops. I'm like, I don't know, somebody I'm probably gonna pass on.
All right. Now, my understanding is, as far as to become a taxi driver, there are various expenses associated with becoming a taxi driver. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Can you provide, I'm sure the board probably knows, but just kind of refresh their memory as to some of those expenses?
Well, there's a drug test, our company drug test. So there's the drug test. They have to get a DOT physical, and then they have to go through the TA, which charges for the FBI background check and the permit.
All right. And so as far as for YCS, does YCS cover those expenses for the?
We do for anybody that's coming into the industry. If it's a existing driver from another company, we don't. But if it's a driver who's never been in the industry, then we do pay for all that.
So in other words, YCS is trying to do what it take steps to make it easier for new people to come into the industry.
Yeah, I mean, what I was finding was that we offered a lot more positions than people were returning. And when we did a little investigation why that was happening is people just didn't have the money. It's kind of expensive to drive to get into business now. So we wanted to find an easier way that benefits the employee, but also benefits the company because we're able to onboard somebody quicker and we're able to onboard them where sometimes they hear the cost and they just don't come back because they can't afford it.
Now, as far as some of the people you hire, do you ever get any Uber or Lyft drivers?
These days, well over 90% of the people that I hire at some point, either the Uber, Lyft, Grubhub, Uber Eats, you know, one of the gig economies, almost every one of them these days at some point has tried it. A lot of them don't have a car anymore. They're coming here on the bus when at least that's what they told me. It just doesn't seem a model that they can do for a long period.
All right. Now, as far as, we're here for independent cab company's application to become a new taxi company. And on behalf of YCS, does YCS oppose or support that application?
We oppose it.
And why is that?
We don't believe the industry needs another cab company. We think we're doing a very good job of servicing the community right now. Our numbers unfortunately continue to decline, and there's more transportation companies or, tunnels that Elon Musk, and there's just a lot of things out there. And so with a decline, it just doesn't seem like it's the best thing. I mean, right now, in my opinion, the industry needs more consolidation more than anything, and that's happening organically already. You see now we have 7 cab companies, Desert has 2 companies, Bella has 2 companies, Lucky and Western are working out of the same yard. So consolidation seems like it's already happening on its own without anybody getting involved. So I don't see the need for another cab company.
Okay. Now, do you consider, there's been some discussion during the hearing about how, well, an additional company will be a better competition, will increase competition among the taxi companies. And do you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, or?
I don't. I mean, I look at it. I just think the more you spread it out, it waters everything down. And I also believe that we really are doing a very good job, and this is mostly because of the TA. We always had a bad rap, and a lot of it was because of bad operators. And I'm not saying that Mr. Carson is going to be a bad operator, but and listen to his testimony, I don't think he's really learned the industry, and I think it could be a black eye for our entire industry by having somebody come in who doesn't know how to run the cab company.
And you mentioned that. When you say you heard something in his testimony, what did you hear?
I mean, I have heard. I mean, first of all, I haven't heard most of the things I've heard are I'll figure it out. But like one thing that jumped out at me was on the cameras, where I don't remember who he was talking to, but he said something to the effect like, "I'm not going to hire somebody to sit there and watch videos all day," and he obviously doesn't understand the value of the cameras. The cameras, part of it is to do accident reconstruction, but that's not the real value. The real value of the cameras is to watch these behaviors that drivers do and try to either correct those behaviors before there's an accident or get rid of that driver who won't listen to any of the coaching before there's an accident. And we're not 100% by any or even close to that, but that's our goal. And we find out a lot about our drivers. Sometimes it's not even safety related. Sometimes it's customer service related. And it's one of the best tools we have to really, it's not like the type of job Mr. Armstrong to look at his staff and see how they're doing. Our drivers are on the road. We need a way to monitor them, and the cameras are the best way to do that, in my opinion.
So do you believe the current CPCN holders are meeting the needs of Clark County?
Yes, I do.
And are they willing to meet are the current CPCN holders willing to meet the needs of the community going forward?
Yes.
And why do you say yes?
I just think we're doing all the things. All of us are working hard. We're trying to grow. We're bringing new technology into our industry, and we're doing whatever needs to happen to provide the very best service. And I think we're doing a great job of providing that.
Now, earlier you had mentioned EDC, and then did YCS take any specific steps at this last EDC to try to make sure the needs of the traveling public were met at the EDC?
Yes, I mean, well, first, when there's ever a big show or a big event in town, we place flyers all throughout the company, encouraging drivers to pick up an additional shift. We send an email blast out to all our drivers so they know what's coming and the times where show breaks are going to happen. We always send a road supervisor out there to inform our drivers how it's going, how many loads are waiting, and it's not perfect. I mean, I definitely know where you were coming from, Mr. Decker. It's after 30 years in this industry, there are certain times, certain events that are really hard, and part of it is it's the traffic. It's really hard to get back to these events, And I've always wondered, like, by adding more vehicles on there, does that even make it worse? I don't know, because it seems the bigger the event, the biggest challenge is not that our drivers don't want to get there, they can't get there. We're just not, everyone knows how bad our traffic has gotten. And so adding more cabs, I don't know if that's going to solve that problem. I really don't.
Right. Now, as far as, we talked about YCS's willingness to meet the needs of the community. During the pandemic, did YCS ever shut down?
No, we stayed open. We had talked about shutting down, a lot of the companies did, but, we really have a real footprint in the community. And even though the strip wasn't operating, we have a lot of people who rely on us for getting to dialysis, doctor's appointments, going shopping, pharmacy. And so we kept a very small skeleton crew, drivers who volunteered because they take care of their customers. Some of them have personals. And even though it would have been more cost effective to shut down because we had to buy all the PPE equipment, we were at one point spending like $10,000 a month just to operate. And so it wasn't, from a business standpoint, financially it wasn't smart, but for our customers, I think it was really vital that we stayed open.
And as far as you talked about the PPE, and that's the personal protective equipment, just for the
Yes.
record. So
Yes,
oh,
sorry. Yes.
no, it's good. And as far as that, there was no offsets or anything from the TA or anything to kind of combat the cost of that, the additional PPE expenses.
I never saw that check come from you guys.
And they didn't, but also there was no increase in the rates during that time frame to offset those costs.
No, there was not.
So YCS bore the cost of that PPE equipment entirely, is that?
That's correct.
There was some discussion earlier during part one of this hearing, and kind of refresh your memory, where there was discussion of MTN, the medical transport company. Did YCS ever work with or have any involvement with that entity?
Yes, we did.
And is that company still around, or does it?
I don't know. I think they basically used us to fill a gap before they could get their own providers. It was a lot of work the way they did it. It put a lot of strain on our accounting department, the way they were billing. And I think eventually we did get all our money except for a few dollars, but they weren't great about paying.
I think you already, now does YCS participate in the senior voucher program?
Yes, it's because we do so many rides off the strip, we get a lot of those.
And how long has YCS been doing those type of trips?
Ever since I've been with the company, I don't know how long.
Previously with other providers, there's been a topic of discussion as to whether or not the taxi companies are using all of their medallions. Is YCS, and for this purpose I'll combine it with NewCab, are they using all of their medallions?
No.
And do you know how many medallions do they have combined or total?
We have a combined 1,729 medallions.
And how many would you estimate are currently being utilized monthly?
It's really difficult to say now because we do a lot of part-time shifts. So sometimes a cab might go out multiple times, 3-4 times in a day, and we don't switch the medallion. It would look better on paper if we did. So, but like on a Friday, like this past Friday, we put out just shy of 1,000 shifts that day.
All right. Now, 1,000 shifts probably seems like a lot, but let's kind of compare that to where things were at the time of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
How many drivers did YCS have up to like right before the pandemic?
The day when we started furloughing our drivers, we had 1,995 drivers.
Why do you remember that number?
I like numbers, I don't know.
Okay. And
Just good with numbers.
all right. So now, as far as that 1,729 medallions, how many of those came from the Frias acquisition?
916.
And so, and when did YCS acquire the Frias medallions?
March 19th, 2019.
All right, so roughly YCS had the Prius medallions for about a year prior to the pandemic, almost to the day, actually.
Yes, somewhere around there, yes.
All right. And had YCS, when YCS acquired Prius, those medallions, did YCS hire all of Prius's former drivers?
No, it was an asset sale, so we just bought their medallions and their vehicles. Prior to the sale closing, I spent 5 weeks on Prius's property trying to recruit drivers to our company. By the time I got there, though, they didn't have a whole lot of drivers. They had let a lot go or had left. I don't know why. So I ended up hiring a little under 600. I believe it's like 580 something is what I ended up hiring.
All right. Now, and we've talked a little bit about Uber and Lyft. What has YCS done or created to kind of combat Uber and Lyft?
Well, I mean, one of our best programs that we have is called, it's a flex program. I started off as part-time flex, and I got the idea because, like I mentioned, so many people who were applying for the job were former Uber and Lyft drivers. And when they would come in, I would ask them what they liked and disliked about the company. And what they disliked about the company was using their own vehicles, and a lot of them unfortunately didn't have a vehicle anymore. But what everyone was telling me that he really loved about it was the flexibility. So I came up with this program called Part-Time Flex. And the way Part-Time Flex is, it's kind of Uber, except there's no expense to them. We pay for all the fuel, we pay for the vehicle, the auto insurance, car washes, maintenance, and a driver could come and go as often as they like. As long as they have to stay under 30 hours per week, as the Department of Labor. And of course, they can't work more than 12 hours a day, but other than that, they create their own schedule. And if they don't feel like working a week, they don't even have to come in, and it's become very popular. What's exciting to me is the word spread, so sometimes on their application now, they don't even write driver, they say flex driver, and it's like, okay, that's exciting to me. It means the word's getting out there, and it got so popular, I actually have a full-time flex program, which is most drivers, full-time drivers, want to go traditional scheduling, but I probably still have close to 150 flex full-time drivers as well.
All right. And how many, during the last month, how many drivers has YCS hired?
Well, I always look at it from our internal board meetings, and we had our last board meeting last week, and from the board meeting in September to October, we gained 41 drivers, so that was pretty exciting. That was a good jump.
Okay. Yeah. All right. As part of YCS and when it acquired Prius and acquired some of those assets, as well as some of the issues with the pandemic, has YCS had to retire any vehicles?
Yes, a lot of them.
And can you estimate how many vehicles YCS had to retire because of their age?
I don't know. I believe it was in the hundreds, but I don't know the exact number.
All right. Now, as far as replacing those vehicles, has YCS had any difficulty replacing those vehicles?
Very difficult. It's been over a year now. Our board had authorized me to buy 450 vehicles. Unfortunately, nobody really will take an order. We're kind of limited on the vehicles we look for because we do convert our vehicles to propane. And so I'm primarily looking for Ford Escapes and RAV4s. And Cheryl testified yesterday what Ford told him. I got the same message. As a fleet, they're going to allow me to purchase 5 vehicles per quarter. And Toyota's kind of been the same thing. Like Cheryl testified, we've never really bought used vehicles before, but I've had to start doing that. Actually bought 2 last night at 10 o'clock. But the prices are ridiculous. I paid more for a used vehicle than a new vehicle. But we need vehicles right now. So I think I've purchased 51 vehicles now.
Now, as far as that 51 vehicles, is that in the last 6 months, the last year, over what time frame?
It's probably been close to a year since that's taken. And there's a lot of them I have to turn down because, I got a few weeks ago, I got 72 for 45,000, and these are RAV4s. I mean, it's just, I couldn't do that.
So obviously it has to make economic sense.
Sure.
As far as purchasing the vehicles.
Sure.
And are you aware of any or dealers selling new cars over sticker prices?
Yes.
And can you provide an example of that?
Well, I mean, I reach out to dealers, and when they tell me the price, like we're looking at a couple of, the board's also authorized us to buy 5 electric vehicles. And last week, we found some, but they were $8,000 over sticker.
And do you know what the sticker price was roughly?
I think it was 50, 51, somewhere around there.
So you're looking about $59,000 for a new car,
Yes,
or as far as those EVs.
yes.
And earlier and during Mr. Carson's testimony, he had talked about how, basically let me try, and if I fail, it's on me and it's my money situation. Do you think that's good for the industry?
No, I think that's horrible for the industry. I mean, this is a unique industry because most people don't look at an individual cab company. If one of my driver long hauls, people go back and say Vegas cab drivers long haul. So it kind of affects all of us. And for us, it's even a little worse because when people don't know what company it is, they all say yellow. And I can tell you that we have 7 brands, and almost every lost and found item it was in a yellow cab. I'm 100% sure. And so we know that's not true. But yeah, it kind of paints the whole industry in a negative light. And I think, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, we've really kind of turned the corner. I think the flat rate program really has helped to give us back credibility. I think it's the best thing in my experience that Taxi Cab Authority has ever done. I wish as an industry we can do a better job of promoting it. We did try to, a while back, get our partners in the industry to all put in a nickel or a dime of every ride going to the airport to build an advertising fund. Fortunately, we didn't get the support, but I hear it all the time where people say, if I would have known, I would have been taking cab all this time, because a lot of times we're cheaper than Uber. Drivers tell me people walk up to them with their phone in their hand, they're waiting for their Uber and say, how much are you to the airport? And the driver tells them what the flat rate is. And it's like, well, this is cheaper than Uber, but we're just not getting that message out there, and we have to figure out a way to get that message. But I kind of went off topic there, sorry. The overall, yeah, one bad operator can cloud and make the whole industry look bad.
So, all right. And as far as you've heard Mr. Carson's testimony, did you hear anything unique or special that he was going to bring to the industry that the industry's not already doing?
I haven't heard one thing. I'm not sure what the boutique is. I'm excited to hear. I love new ideas, but I haven't heard it yet, so I don't know.
All right. As far as YCS, is YCS working on anything to more directly compete with Uber and Lyft?
Yeah, I can't share it because it's all proprietary, but this started prior to the pandemic, and we've restarted again. We've already are over $1 million. It's going to cost us several $1 million, and without getting into the specifics, we're not going after the customers we already got. We want to go the customers that we don't have. So the millennials, the Gen Z folks, and this is where this program is going. And some really exciting things. And I'm hoping by the end of this year, or definitely beginning first quarter of next year, you're going to see some exciting things from our company. And we're really trying to kind of think outside the box.
All right. And just kind of a couple quick follow-ups. As far as if there's an accident with a YCS vehicle, who pays for, who's at YCS, who takes care of that expense of repairing the taxi cab?
We have 100%. We have no driver responsibility. Our drivers, we have 2 unions at our company, Yellow Checker Stars under the ITPEU, and 4 new cab companies under Steelworkers, and both have a no responsibility category in there for accidents. So we front the full cost of that.
Is that reimbursed at all by insurance?
No,
All right, so YCS bears the entire brunt of that cost?
correct.
And so that whether it's a bumper or a total of the vehicle, YCS is on the hook for that.
That's correct.
All right, that's all I have.
No questions.
No questions.
Any questions?
No questions, right?
Yeah, unfortunately, I've got some. Good morning, Mr. Bailey.
Good morning, sir.
Wow, it's kind of rough sitting here, sitting right next to you, and all the bad things you have to say about me, but I got thick skin, they can live with it. Let me go take you back to your first manager's job with the cab company.
Yes,
What
sir.
was that?
A driver supervisor.
Is that considered a manager?
It's a supervisor.
Okay, how about going back to the first time that you had the title manager?
That would have been, director of driver development. That was a manager position.
Okay, and prior to becoming director of driver development / manager,
Mhm.
had you ever been a manager for a company, a taxi cab company before?
No, sir.
Had you ever been a manager or owner or anything of a transportation company?
No, sir.
Okay, and I believe you testified that when you became that manager, quote, there was so much you didn't know.
Correct.
So hiring you as a manager without the full knowledge, was it taking a chance on you?
Well, I think they also, I don't know, I can't speak for themselves, but I think the reason I was selected is because of the things I did know. I didn't know a lot of stuff, but I did know a lot of things.
Okay, you didn't know everything though, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Do you still know everything now?
No, I learn something new every day.
Okay, so 30 years in the industry and you're still learning, there's still a learning curve.
Correct, but fortunately, I have a lot of resources around me. Not only at our company, I mean, I called Cheryl the other day and asked her a question, so I do have a lot of resources.
I understand that. I've been around the industry for a little bit of time, right?
Yes, well, as far, I've never met you before.
Right, I think you're one of the people I don't know.
I kind of stay.
Understandable. Are those kind of resources available? Could I reach out to Cheryl? Could I reach out to Mr. Balaban?
You'd have to ask them, I don't know.
Okay, could I reach out to you?
Sure.
Okay, would you help me?
I'd give you as much information as I could, sure.
Okay, so if I don't have all of the information going into being a manager of a company, would you say that I could gain that information through hands-on experience?
I assume so, sure.
Okay, so you don't have to be, so an applicant applying for a job or a CPCN doesn't have to know everything, they just need to be on the right track?
That's for the board to decide. I don't know.
What's your opinion? You've been around, you testified
I
that
mean,
I'm
look
not
at-
capable, so.
I mean, just honestly, I'm not trying to be adversarial with
Well,
you or
I'm pretty
anything,
sure you
but
are,
I'm not. I mean, but through your testimony, as I'm sitting here, and I've never owned a business before, to be completely transparent, but it doesn't seem like you've done a lot of research. I mean, a lot of things is I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out, I'll figure it out. And it's like, if I was gonna be investing my money, I would have figured a lot of this stuff out. I might not be completely right, but I don't see personally where you put that work in.
Okay, I understand that. But as I said before, if I were to do this, can I gain experience on the job?
I'm sure you could.
Okay, and do I have to be a Cheryl or a George to be an applicant? Or can somebody off the street apply for it?
That's for the board to decide. I really don't know.
Okay, that's your opinion as a operations manager, director, general manager, whatever you are.
I personally, I would, if I was going to be granting you a permit, I would want to see a lot more from you than I've seen.
Okay, how many general managers are there in the Las Vegas Taxi Cab Company?
How many general managers?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like I'd have to think about every one. I mean, right now, there's 4 of us in here right now.
Okay, under 16?
Yes, because there's 16 cab companies. We have 7. Cheryl's got 2 companies. George has got 2 companies. We've got Mario. Western and Lucky have 1 general manager.
Okay, so let's just say 7 or 8, 7.
Sure.
Okay, just whatever it is, I know that's just a number we're using. So would it be your testimony that those 7 or 8 people are the only qualified people to apply for a taxi cab CPCN?
No? So,
Okay,
I'm saying specifically referring to you, in my opinion, you haven't done the work that I would think would be required to start a cab company.
okay, that's in your opinion.
That's my opinion.
Okay, had you done the work to become general manager before you became a manager?
Absolutely. I've got 30+ years of this industry.
Okay, and if I represented companies like yourself for over 2 decades of my life, does that not provide me with some kind of basis and understanding and experience?
In some aspects of it, but
Okay.
you couldn't jump into my job.
Okay, but I am possible, and it is possible for me,
I could do your job, by the way, either.
I understand, but it's possible for me to read the regulations and read the statutes and conform those statutes to a business practice. Is that would you agree with that?
I don't know. I mean, I think reading something in a book and actually applying it in the real world are not always the same thing.
Okay. So
I mean, we got to follow the laws, but there's a lot left out in those regulations, and there's a lot of room for interpretation.
Were you here when ACAB was approved in the industry?
Yes,
Okay, what experience did Jay Nady have at all as an owner or a manager of a taxi cab company?
I have no idea.
None?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. I wasn't back then until last several years, I never went to taxi cab authority meetings. It was, my superiors were going.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that you don't believe that there's a need for public transfer, additional medallions, correct?
That's correct.
And you mentioned that you think you're doing a good job
Yes.
with transportation. If you're doing such a good job, how is it possible that Uber and Lyft hired 10,000 new drivers just in this last year alone?
I don't know.
Does that suggest that there's more of a need than you're letting this board know?
A need for what?
Transportation,
Look,
point to point, common motor carrier.
I mean, having a lot of drivers, how much they're driving. I mean, most of the people that I'm hiring, and I ask them how much they're driving, they say, I barely do it at all because it just doesn't make sense to them.
Okay, so let me help clarify your testimony here, because you said that Uber and Lyft were doing a better service because they have more numbers on the road, more drivers. I think you said partners or companions or something like that. True?
They were able to provide quicker service than we were back then.
Because they are so big.
Yes.
Okay,
I mean, you know, they could have a guy sitting next door to you who's sitting and watching TV and he sees the hell come through and he could jump in the car and take you.
would you agree with that? Well, it's your testimony, and I'm trying to say if this is right. They can provide a better service because they have more numbers, is what I quoted you.
I said they were providing a quicker service than we were. So
Okay.
if I misspoke, then that's not what I meant. I meant that I certainly don't think they provided better service than we do, but I think they were getting there quicker than we were. And that
Okay.
was one of the things why people were using their service.
Okay, is quicker service something that benefits the traveling public?
Most people wanted their cab or transportation faster, yes.
Okay, so you mentioned,
And we met that need.
okay, but yet they still hired 10,000 more people than you in the last year?
I don't know how many they hired. I'm just,
Okay.
whatever you said.
I mean, you've seen the statistics, right? You sat through my opening, my direct, and you heard everything that I said, right?
I did, and I loved I love hearing about both of your guys' stories, and I was impressed with it, but I don't recall the numbers.
You just testified you were a numbers guy.
Yeah.
Okay, but you don't recall my numbers, just your own?
Yeah. Mine are
Let's talk
correct.
about 35 cars versus, let me see, let me ask you this, because I don't believe Mr. Gibson asked you that. How many cars does Yellow Checker Star and NECAB own combined?
I don't know the exact number. It's somewhere between the upper eights and 900.
900 cars. You have 1,729 medallions,
That's correct.
and you have 1,651 drivers.
Correct.
Okay. So you're not putting out nearly half of your allotted medallions, is that basically true?
The way we, like I said, with this Flex program, we might send the vehicle out 4 or 5 times in the same day and we don't switch the medallion up. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons why, in previous years, the TA statistics used to be, I think, like 13 pages. And one of the pages was blown ships. Well, you guys don't include it anymore because I think it's impossible to really do these days because there are so many short ships going on there.
Do you think the taxi cab authority has the ability, right, power to recall allocations of medallions that are not being used?
I'm not an attorney, but my understanding is it's a property right, so.
Well, didn't you sue the state of Nevada saying that medallions were property rights? Yellow, when I say you, yellow checker star?
I don't know.
And didn't the district court come back and say there is no property right?
Council, you say you didn't know.
Okay, just making sure.
I don't know.
Okay, were you involved in that lawsuit?
No, sir.
Okay. Were you aware of the premises of that lawsuit?
No, sir.
Are you aware of a statute or a regulation that specifically says that granting the certificate is not a property right?
Objection.
No, go ahead.
No, I have an objection. He's already indicated he doesn't know with regard to the lawsuit. Brett Carson is attempting to testify as to a case that's ongoing litigation, and frankly, just for the record, and so it's clear, that is currently before the Nevada Supreme Court. Oral argument has already been heard, and a decision is pending whenever the Nevada Supreme
If
Court
you want to
decides
swear
to.
Mr. Gibson here on his talking objection, you've already made your rule that he didn't know, so I moved on. But if he wants to swear him in, I'll ask him the exact same questions.
Well, Mr. Carson, can't you just ask us to take judicial notice of something, or official notice of something?
I guess that's
If there's
possible.
If there's a decision you want us to look at, instead of examining a lay witness about a legal matter?
Okay. No, I don't need you to take judicial notice. I don't know if you could take judicial notice of a
Well, we could take official notice.
official.
Of a court case, we
Yeah.
certainly can.
Okay, I thought it was just state agencies and the likes, but yeah, okay. Definitely, there is a case.
Official notice is equal to judicial notice, except for that it's actually more flexible under the APA.
Okay.
I'm not trying to keep you from putting the evidence in, but I don't think this is a fruitful
No,
method of trying to do it.
I understand that. I was just looking at something. I'll ask for a little indulgence at the end of my cross, if that's okay. You mentioned that leased drivers tend to be more aggressive. Is that, did I say, understand that correctly?
From my experience, no.
Okay. Tell this board what the term low booking means in your companies.
Well, like I mentioned to you, everything I do, at the beginning of each day, I go through the productivity from the day before. And at our company, anybody who's 15% or more below is considered below average for that shift. And so when I see a driver that's 15% or more below, the first thing I want to do is see, did they just have a bad day, or is this ongoing? And if it is ongoing, then I'm going back and looking at their electronic trip sheets and seeing what I can do to help them. I'm going to coach them and to help them figure out why they're not doing as well. We're never going to ask any driver to do anything unsafe or illegal, but I do want to make sure that they know how to use all their tools, for example, the computer. If they need help with time management or strategy, we're going to provide that for them. I can't even tell you when the last time I terminated a driver for low book, though, if that's what you're getting at.
You write up people for low booking.
Yes,
And if you tell them, hey, if you keep low booking, you're going to be fired.
sure.
Okay, does that not incentivize them to make more money, pick up more rides, take risks, and everything like that?
Absolutely not.
Okay, just lease drivers do that, not your drivers?
Well, we want to tolerate, hold on, when I write a warning letter, if you've seen any of the warning letters I've written, you'll see at the bottom of that warning letter, I've got a list of things. Here's what you need to do to improve. Take some computer calls, watch your dead miles, stop going back to the same cab stand all the time.
But you also say, if you don't make my company money, we're gonna fire you.
If you have an employee working for you and they're not doing what you're asking,
I'm asking the questions and it'll go a lot smoother if you just answer my question.
yes,
Okay.
it's possible if they don't listen to the instructions we're giving them, I could terminate them.
Okay, so if somebody's low booking and it's not their fault, they're just maybe out there not doing this, they can be fired.
Obviously, you don't know anything about the industry.
I
Because
obviously do.
if they're,
I take
if
really
they're-
good comment at that, so
if-
strike that record.
Gentlemen, quick.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir.
Pose a question.
I
answer the
did,
question.
and I asked him just to answer my
Restate-
question.
Restate the question.
If they're not making money for your company, you can fire them.
Yes.
Okay. And if somebody is out there low booking constantly, they're at danger of being terminated.
If they are not doing the things we're asking them to.
If
They're,
they are continually low booking, they are at risk of termination.
if they follow.
Yes or no, please?
Can I
He's
not
trying to
answer?
answer his question.
He's got an attorney that.
I'm objecting.
Can rehabilitate him if he wants, but.
I'm objecting. Let him
Yes
answer
or
his
no
question.
questions. Object to it, I don't care.
Restate the question.
If somebody continuously low books, are they subject to termination?
That's a yes or no question, and your counsel can redirect you.
Yes, they could.
Okay, and how do you get somebody under a threat of termination to gain more money for the company?
At the warning letter that they would have received, it's going to tell them what they need to do to improve. It's not asking them to steal, because we wouldn't tolerate, that would be an automatic termination. I'm going to give them all the reasons. Well, here's why. We have a lot of technology. We use Captain's technology. One of the beautiful things about Captain's technology is all the things I've been doing, talking to drivers about improving their book over years. They have graphs, so I can look at it and say, okay, look right here. Your dead miles are much higher than the average driver. So what do we need to do? We need to stay closer to where you drop off. And I go through every one of these, and for example, I'll say, oh my God. And the drivers, you know, used to be, they thought I was pulling things out of the air, but now they can see the graph. And like the last one on these graphs is computer calls. I'll say, wow, this is weird. You're not even showing up on this graph here. That's weird. And they'll say, oh, I don't take any computer calls. Okay, so here's something we correct. Do you need help with the computer? So I'm not terminating somebody because they're just not making it. You pick up the book no matter what it takes, you need it. No, if you do these things, you will make our average. Look at the TA stats. Our average ride is not the highest ride, we're close to it. We want our drivers to use all their tools. And if they're not using all their tools, could I terminate them? Yes. When's the last time I've done it? I couldn't even tell you.
When's the last time you've written somebody up for a low booking?
I do it all the time.
Yesterday? Today?
No, I've been here, unfortunately.
And how about the week before?
Yeah, I wrote warning, I'm sure I wrote a few warning letters, not a lot, but there's probably a few in there.
Okay.
Most of it's just coaching, but if I keep on telling a driver, hey, you're not doing well, because every one time you drop off, no matter where you drop off, you're going back to the MGM Grand, and I keep on talking to him and talking to him, then I write him a warning letter eventually.
Listen, I don't envy you. You are the general manager of the largest company's conglomerate, Las Vegas. I commend that, actually.
Thank you.
But you've got to realize.
You're not going to recruit me, Brett.
I'm not. Don't worry about that, not after today. But you've got to realize the difference between 1,729 medallions and 35 medallions
Sure.
is night and day.
Absolutely.
Okay, wouldn't need nearly the resources that you guys have to expend daily, weekly, monthly, or yearly, is that right?
What do you mean by resources?
I mean, you've got programs, simulators, all stuff that you guys are able to do because you're a large company.
I mean, personally, I think it's all valuable stuff. I mean,
There's companies that provide that service, though, you don't need to own it yourself, right?
I imagine so. I don't know.
Okay. Now, would you agree with me that managing 35 cars, basically the infrastructure that your company provides?
Sure.
Okay. Is it easier in your experience, or would it be easier to manage 35 cars versus 1729?
Yes.
Okay. And with that easier management, isn't there a little bit of wiggle room as to somebody's experience that they can learn from it because it's not as overwhelming?
I really don't know. I mean, I think it kind of goes both ways. I mean, one of the things about being so large, I don't have to be an expert. And when I applied for the general manager job, I wasn't like any other general manager that's ever worked for the company, everyone else, for the most part, had a very strong financial background, which I don't. I told you, I'm a high school graduate. But we have all these great resources. We have a CFO, we have a controller, we have our legal team, we have just every position, because we are so large. So I don't have to be an expert on anything. I have to manage, every department reports directly to me, but I don't, I mean, I'm not going to tell Keith how to try a case because he's the expert on that.
I understand. You delegate.
Yes,
Okay. That's part of your position, is to delegate authority and oversee operations?
right, and meet timelines and make sure everyone's doing the job that they were hired for.
So if I hire a CFO and an accountant, I can delegate them to do their position?
Well, based on what you plan to pay them, I think that's going to be difficult, but yes.
Oh, okay. If I'm lucky enough to find somebody, whatever their numbers are, that's something that's possible, right?
Sure.
Isn't that part of like a good leader, is that you surround yourself with people that are smarter than you?
Absolutely. That's been my game plan. I read once early on that you are the average of people you surround yourself with. And that's been my philosophy in my whole time in this industry.
Now, you mentioned that you guys had an unsuccessful lease program, is that correct?
I don't know if it was unsuccessful. It wasn't, our owners didn't like the business model.
Okay. You remember your pre-filed testimony? Have you ever seen this document before?
I don't believe so. If I did, I don't recall it.
Okay, can you turn to the second page? I think I haven't underlined it. Tell me if that is a correct statement as you sit here today.
Might be helpful to read it into the record, because
Sure.
we won't otherwise know what you're talking about.
All right, for the record, this is the intervenor Nevada Yellow Check with Stars summary. Summary of Mr. Balin's testimony. And it says, Mr. Balin will testify about the unsuccessful 20 medallion lease programs attempted by YCS.
Yeah, I'm not sure what unsuccessful there. It wasn't a business model that the owners of our company liked. So I don't know if I would call that unsuccessful.
I didn't, I was just using,
Yeah.
I was using your words.
Apparently they weren't his words.
Yeah, I don't recall ever saying that. But
Okay, so this is not your pre-filed testimony?
if it was, I don't recall it,
Okay.
honestly.
Who signed the document, counsel?
Huh?
Who signed the document, counsel?
Pete Gibson.
Thank you.
Were you aware that, you're aware that Mr. Balin is at Virgin Valley, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and that's an all lease program,
Yes, sir.
and that over the past years, his leases have doubled?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not it doesn't have anything to do with lease program per se, the model. Rather, it was your upper management owners that says we don't want a lease.
I don't feel this competition that everyone else feels in here. I'm just trying to make our company as good as it can be and be profitable and make it a great place to work. I mean, the lease model is just not, it's a different model than ours. I don't know if one is better than others. I mean, if you talk to anybody there, most of the companies don't want to lease, but they feel they have to lease because it's difficult to get drivers at this point, the operators I've talked to, but everyone's just got their own point of view. I don't say one's better than another.
I know, I wasn't asking that, I'm just saying there are two different models, but your company chose to go one way as opposed to Mr. Balaban with Virgin.
Yes.
Are both models able to be run correctly?
Our models were, I can't speak on behalf of another company because I don't know.
Okay, you've heard Mr. Balaban say that Virgin River and Desert Cab's profitable, correct?
Yes,
Are your companies profitable?
yes,
All seven?
yes.
Okay. You mentioned that when you did this lease program and we're trying to get it off the ground, that you were opening it up for 20 spots, I guess?
We were piloting 20.
Piloting 20, and for that 20, you received over 600 cab drivers that wanted to get on that list?
Yes.
You think there's a demand for lease drivers? based upon your experience?
Based on my experience, yes. But can I add to that?
If you're going to. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah, go ahead.
You mentioned that kind of said that Uber did a better service because of the numbers, but now it's a quicker service. Is that correct? Your testimony?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Uber was performing a better service, but you said better was not quite the word. It should have been a quicker service than the taxi cabs?
That's my opinion, yes.
Okay, and that was because of the volume, right? Of companions or partners or whatever they have?
They were beating us to the rides.
So let me ask you this. Do you think an Uber or Lyft car operator is safer than a regulated taxi cab company and their driver?
No.
Okay. Would you say that any ride we take from a Lyft or an Uber, such as people at the airport saying, oh, if I'd have known that, I would have jumped in you because it's cheaper, you know?
Mhm.
They just don't know it. Do you think every ride we take that would have been an Uber or a Lyft is better for the industry?
I think it potentially could be. I think when customers have an opportunity to see both, that they would choose us.
Right, but I'm just
Not
saying,
all.
if there was somebody like a Gen Z or a millennial that you referenced
Yes.
that switched from an Uber and Lyft over to Cabot or to the taxi cab industry, that's better for the industry. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's because we generate income for us, companies,
Sure.
the state, taxi cab authority, everybody, correct?
Yes, of course, it does matter on the operator. I mean, it depends on whose cab they get in. Could be I mean, if they have a bad experience, and this happens to our drivers too, we're not perfect, I'll get a complaint and a customer will say, terrible cab service, and I'm never taking you guys again. So we have to do a better job when we get a complaint like that. But overall, I think people find that our drivers do a better job.
No. Obviously, in 2015, when Uber and Lyft came onto the scene, they were able to undercut, subsidize rides just for market share. Is that your understanding?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see those days of being over?
I don't know. I mean, every time I see a report, it looks like they're still losing billions of dollars every year. But they still have a lot of programs out there too, so I don't know.
Okay. But have you seen their prices coming up to where yours are currently as set by the taxi cab authority?
I think on some rides, we are less expensive and some rides we're more expensive.
It's more comparable than it was in
Absolutely.
2015.
No question.
So now the choice between a cab and an Uber is getting pretty close. I mean, they just want quickness.
They want convenience and they're in price.
Okay. You mentioned, and I quoted this, the industry has a bad rap, or gets a bad rap. What do you mean by that?
At one time, we had a bad rap. I
And
mean,
what was the cause of that bad rap, or what is a bad rap? So we can
I mean,
explain to the board.
people had a negative idea about the cab industry, and I think most of it was due to long hauling, and I think that's because of the flat rate program that a lot of that has been solved.
Okay. Let me talk to you, you've been around for a while. Let's talk about illegal rides, gypsy cabs, off-app rides. Are you familiar with any of those?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about a gypsy cab. What is that in your opinion, or so we can inform the board?
Unregulated, unmetered person using their vehicle as a cab.
Okay. Illegal, I mean, would you say, I would say a gypsy cab's just like an illegal cab.
Yes.
Okay, how about these off-app rides? What are those? Do you ever heard of that?
Yes.
Okay, how does that occur?
Basically, they have a sticker on their vehicle, says Uber or Lyft, and these four gentlemen are standing somewhere and say, hey, guys, you waiting for a ride? Yeah, we're going to Caesar's Palace, $20. And the driver puts in their pocket, and Uber doesn't see any of it, and it goes all right to the driver.
Right, is that, to me, I'll say that is probably the most dangerous practice of transportation that's going on in Clark County right now. Would you agree?
I don't know. I'd have to
Okay.
look at that all.
Let me ask you this. If I picked up these four gentlemen saying I was in an Uber and I'll take you to Caesar's Palace, and I get into an accident, Uber doesn't know who I am because I'm off app, correct?
I don't think they're paying for it.
They're not
That's
paying
what
for it.
you're- yeah.
And my other insurance, because I'm doing a commercial ride, isn't going to pay for that. Is that correct?
That would be my assumption,
Okay. And so who gets hurt in that situation?
the customer.
Okay. How often, now, you've been around since 2015 and COVID and all this, how often do you believe that those off-app rides are happening per night?
I have no idea.
Would
I
you say
couldn't,
a lot?
I couldn't even take a guess. I have no idea. I hear about them, but I don't know how prevalent it is.
Okay. Would you agree that that's in a market that cab drivers and cab owners should be targeting to try to get those illegal rides back?
I think, and I know they're doing the best they can, that's the taxi cab authority's job, not ours. We're not the
The
police.
NTAs or the?
I think they should be both working in unison.
Okay. And I think Mr. Armstrong has even been talking to him about that.
I'm sorry?
I think Mr. Armstrong's been talking to the NTA about that, but that's neither here nor there.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions. Reader?
Yes. When you spent quite a bit of time talking about a low book situation with Brent. And when you say low book, and I just want to be clear, so there's like an average daily book for that particular day.
For that particular shift. It's based on the drivers who are working the same shift under the same conditions.
All right. And part of that is and correct me if I'm wrong, YCS employees are on a commission basis with a potential for minimum wage if they don't meet the book. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. And so it behooves the driver to be more profitable so that they can make more money for themselves.
Correct. And I just really feel Mr. Carson's kind of not really understanding what we do. It's not intended to be a bad thing. It's, in fact, everyone I hire, I let them know that you are going to be called in quite a bit by us. But it's because we want to see you successful at this. We're committed to every driver's success. Our goal is to get every driver home safe every night and help you make as much money as you possibly can. Now, and that's for the vast majority of drivers, it's just, we're working together as a team. Here's some ideas. Let me show you this. This might make it more clear. But on occasion, do I get drivers who just don't listen and they're an employee? Yes, I'm going to have to get their attention with a warning letter sometimes.
And you talked about like doing computer calls. Is that your terminology for like cabin or universal dispatch?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's a cabin call.
Right. And so that means basically a call away from the strip or the golden triangle, as we like to joke about.
It could be on a strip too.
Okay.
We do get calls on the strip as well.
Right. And you had mentioned also one of the things you coach the drivers about is not having too many dead miles. When you say a dead mile, what do you mean by a dead mile?
So it's a driver who's, one of the categories when a driver's doing their meter reads is unpaid miles. And so that's a driver who spent a lot more time driving, a lot further distance than they need to. And we see it a lot in a brand new driver where they fall in love with the stand, MGM Grand, and no matter where they drop off, it could be downtown, they're dead and headed back to that stand because they say, but it moves. It's like, yeah, but you spend so much time. So it's something that we're going to try to correct. Now, sometimes, and we have the technology to do it, do I see, oh man, this guy's just using our cab for his own personal ride and it going all over city and looks like he's going shopping and visiting friends and family. Yeah, that's a disciplinary thing there. But for most of it, it's a behavior we're just trying to correct and to help them become more profitable.
All right. And you had talked about, you were being asked questions about the demand for lease drivers, and you were going to add something, and then,
Well, the thing I was going to add was that Brent had asked me, is there a need? And it's like, or is it popular? It is, but in my opinion, granting anybody a certificate that's going to have a lease model, it's not going to increase our industry by one driver. The drivers are just going to move from one of our existing companies and go to his company because he's going to have this very attractive lease when they first come in, I'm sure. It's not helping the industry at all. It's not going to provide any more. Because I haven't heard one thing that he's going to do to attract anybody from outside the industry. And it's hard to get drivers outside of the industry. That's why the lease program, but all these lease drivers are just former cab drivers that worked as an employee. Now they want to lease a vehicle.
all right? And we talked, and you were crossed about, the need for taxi cab drivers, and you remember Brent's had some pictures that were taken that showed some taxi cab stands that had basically people waiting.
Yes,
And do you remember those photos?
yes.
Do you know what happened 5 minutes later?
No, that was the thing I was kind of curious about when you showed those pictures. What I'd want to know is not showing those people waiting for it. How long did it take to load that last guy in line? That's the only thing that really matters. Just because a convention let out and there's all these people in line, doesn't really tell us anything. What tells us something is how long did that last person in line have to wait? Did they have to wait 10 minutes or did they have to wait an hour? That's what really the question should have been.
And you didn't see any evidence of that, answering that question? Okay,
No, I didn't.
all right. And and there's been testimony about the Brent's gonna be able to lease a space for $4,000. Do you believe that's viable with current market prices?
No, we leased an acre on our property for $10,000 with nothing on it, zero.
Do they have a parking lot?
I think there might be some stripes there is about it, but his numbers seem very low to me.
And I believe that's all the questions I have.
Cross.
Mr. Bellin, you saw the photographs yesterday of Mr. Trafton's client?
Yes,
Okay. Now, as a taxi cab manager, you see the taxi line, and you see the lines that I submitted with the passengers. Wouldn't you believe, when I asked Mr. Constantino, said, how long was it until this guy got a passenger in the car? Is that still would you agree with me that that's the important part?
absolutely, I do.
Okay, so it's,
Yeah.
you want to know about the last person in the line for passengers
Sure.
and the last person in line for cab stands. How long it took for them to actually sit there until they got a ride.
I think that's that's the best metric to know what's really going on out there.
Okay. What's the average trips per vehicle, per shift that you guys do?
I'd have to go back and look on the T stats, you can get it, I don't know.
Just curious if you knew offhand.
I want to say it was like, again, we have so many short shifts going out, it's really not a fair number, but I think it was like 19 and change or something like that.
How many people of your drivers, 1,651, are under 30 hours?
I'd have to go back and look, but it's in the 500 range.
And that 30 hours, I believe you said you could spread it across the 7 days,
Correct,
anytime you wanted to go out.
24/7.
So if all 500 wanted to go out on Friday at 10 PM, they can go out?
Yes.
You mentioned that my company is not actively looking for outside drivers, is that right?
I don't believe I said that.
I thought that's what you just said. so-
Like I said, I don't believe I don't believe anybody getting this industry, if they're leasing that's going to bring any new drivers to the industry.
If I knew people that worked in limousine companies and came to work for a cab company, would that be an outside driver to the taxi cab business?
It would. I
Okay.
wonder why they're not coming now.
You mentioned that you hire drivers from all other companies, is that correct?
Yes,
Would you say that the most of your hires are from other companies?
very few. I mean, there are some, but not nearly the most, no. Most of ours are coming from outside the industry.
Okay, and you said you hire other drivers from other companies who couldn't pass the TA exam. Can you explain that?
So the taxi cab authority requires every driver to pass there's a safety class and there's a test that goes along with it that has been approved through the taxi cab authority. And I think every company's maybe a little different on it. But we take that seriously and we require to go through the class and then they have to pass the written test. And if they don't pass it, we close the position.
As a general manager for the largest company in Clark County, do you have a good understanding of the statutes and regulations of 706?
I usually call Cheryl.
Are you, I'm just gonna ask, are you familiar with NAC 706-158?
I'm not.
Okay, would you take a second to read it?
158, you said?
Yeah.
No property right is granted. No property right is grant of authority. No grant of authority for either common or contract carriage granted after December 1st, 1962 carries the implication or intent of investing holder of the property right.
This time, ask the board to just take official notice of your own regulation, NAC 706-158.
706-158 is notice.
I don't have any further.
Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, no.
Oh,
Mr. Becker.
Mr. Balin, I appreciate,
I snatched victory from the Johnson team.
I appreciate you lending your expertise to the board, but I have no question.
Thank you.
Mr. Behan's answered all the questions I was going to ask him ahead of time, so thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I have no questions either.
My first question is, why do you call Cheryl instead of Mr. Gibson? No. I don't want you to answer
You've
that.
heard Cheryl speak.
I don't. Unless you feel that proprietary, you said that you bought 2 cars last night, how much?
I'll get my phone. They're both in the 31 range. One was a 2019, but it only had, I forget the mileage, and the other one was a 2021 and had a little bit more miles on it, but I'd have to get you the exact. They're paying way too much for them, way too much. The crazy part to me is I have, we've historically, and I know Mr. Decker said don't buy cars from out of state, but that's, in-state here has been really like, I was buying vehicles from AutoNation. And then AutoNation's made a policy now, no more fleet sales, not even one vehicle. I'm paying whatever everyone else is paying, but so I've had to go out of state. But anyways, Longo is where we put in California, where we put our big orders in. And so the salesman there has been our salesman for a long time. So occasionally he'll sneak me a few brand new vehicles in there. And the brand new vehicles are less expensive than the used vehicles I'm purchasing.
You said that you were not able to cover anything on your PPE costs during the pandemic from
From the taxi cab authority. As far as I know, we didn't receive anything.
Did you apply for a rate?
No, sir. No, sir. Not that I'm aware of.
I just want to make sure I understood your testimony, and that was that one of, in your opinion, deficiencies in Mr. Carson's application is that it doesn't present anything unique or special, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a boutique on several occasions, and I kept on thinking like, okay, this sounds interesting. I love new ideas. I'm always looking for new ideas. I haven't heard one thing that he's testified to that makes him different than any other cab company.
Where do you draw the need for something unique or special? Where do you?
Well,
what is your frame of reference for concluding that that needs to be part of an application?
Oh, I don't believe, I don't think there's a need for it, but if he was gonna bring something outside, for example, the program that we're working on that I can't really share with you at this time, if he had something like that and say, okay, well, look at, he's gonna be bringing more people to this industry, I think that would be very powerful, and that might be a reason why you would want to bring him in this industry. I just don't see anything different. And from my opinion, all we're gonna do is be moving drivers from one company to a next, and it's not gonna help our industry at all. If anything, I believe it will hurt it.
Thank you, and now you may be excused.
Thank you, sir.
Before we begin, I have one thing. I would like the taxi board to take notice of the Mirren versus Clark County Taxi Cab Authority case.
Mirren?
Mirren, M-I-R-I-N.
M-I-R-I-N.
Versus Clark County Taxi Cab
I think
Authority.
it's an M.
It's M.
Don't mirror.
Mirren. It's the Mirren case. And the site is 90 NEV 46,
90 and
46,
46.
1974 is the decision, which specifically holds that taxi cabs actually have a property right in their medallions. And subject to that, Nevada Yellow Cab will rest.
We'll take a 9-minute break until quarter of, and then Mr. Carson can present his rebuttal case.
No rebuttal.
You have no rebuttal?
No closing.
Oh, okay, very good. Then we'll take,
9.5 minutes?
Oh, wow, let's go to 10.
yeah, we'll take, so we'll come back at 10 up. Give people a couple minutes.